The moment we've all been waiting for has finally arrived. After years of anticipation, countless delays, and more speculation than any of us care to remember, the Rivian R2 is officially rolling off the production line in Normal, Illinois. And I'm not talking about prototype builds assembled in some secret California facility. I'm talking about real, production-intent vehicles being manufactured on the same assembly line that will produce the R2 you might actually drive home someday. Let me take you back for a second, because the journey to this moment has been nothing short of a roller coaster. When Rivian first teased the R2, the automotive world lost its mind. Here was a company that had already proven it could build incredible electric adventure vehicles with the R1T and R1S, now promising to bring that same innovation and capability to a more accessible price point. The excitement was palpable. Then came the unveiling, and the hype reached fever pitch. Pre-orders flooded in. People were ready to put their money down on a vehicle they'd only seen in carefully choreographed presentations and promotional materials. But then reality set in. Rivian announced they'd be building the R2 at their upcoming Georgia factory, which meant waiting. A lot of waiting. The timeline stretched out further and further into the future, and for many enthusiasts, the dream of driving an R2 started to feel impossibly distant. Then, in a move that surprised almost everyone, Rivian pivoted. They announced they'd be building the R2 in their existing Normal, Illinois facility instead, sharing production capacity with their R1 vehicles. This decision was massive. It meant earlier deliveries. It meant leveraging existing infrastructure. And it meant Rivian could start generating revenue from R2 sales much sooner than originally planned. Now here we are, standing at the threshold of production reality. The vehicles coming off the line right now are what Rivian calls manufacturing validation builds, or MVBs for short. These aren't your typical pre-production prototypes cobbled together with parts that may or may not represent the final product. These are fully painted, fully assembled vehicles with complete interiors and all the features you'd expect to see in a production car. They look production ready because, for all intents and purposes, they are production ready. The significance of these MVBs being built in Normal, Illinois cannot be overstated. The previous R2s that eagle-eyed enthusiasts have spotted driving around California, the ones that have appeared in various testing scenarios and photo opportunities, those were built in Rivian's California facilities. They were essentially hand-built prototypes, useful for testing and validation, but not representative of how your R2 will actually be manufactured. These new MVBs rolling off the Normal assembly line, though, these are the real deal. They're being built using the same processes, the same tooling, the same quality control measures that will be used when Rivian starts delivering vehicles to customers in just a few months. Now, before you get too excited and start checking your email for delivery notifications, understand that these particular vehicles aren't going to customers. They don't have VIN numbers assigned to them. They're not going to be registered and titled to eager reservation holders. Instead, these MVBs serve a multitude of critical purposes that will ultimately make your ownership experience better. Rivian employees will be testing these vehicles extensively, putting them through their paces in real-world conditions that no amount of computer simulation can fully replicate. Assembly line workers will use these builds to refine their processes, to identify any issues in the manufacturing workflow, to become intimately familiar with every component and system that goes into building an R2. The service teams will be getting their hands on these vehicles too, learning the ins and outs of R2 maintenance and repair procedures. When you eventually take your R2 in for service, the technicians working on it will have already spent time with these MVBs, understanding how everything fits together, where potential issues might arise, how to diagnose problems efficiently. There will be crash safety tests conducted, durability testing, validation of every system and subsystem. All of this groundwork is essential to ensuring that when deliveries do start, Rivian can hit the ground running with a product they're confident in and a support infrastructure ready to handle whatever comes their way. Rivian made the announcement about these MVBs on social media, and in typical Rivian fashion, they were strategic about what they revealed. They posted several black and white photographs showing R2s on the assembly line, with CEO RJ Scaringe right there in the thick of it, touching one of the vehicles with what I can only imagine was immense pride and relief. The image you might have seen in various thumbnails and articles, the one with color, that's actually a black and white photo that's been colorized using artificial intelligence. I know, it feels a bit like cheating, but let's be honest, nobody was going to click on a black and white thumbnail. We needed some color to grab attention, to make people actually want to learn more about this incredible milestone. The reason Rivian kept these images in black and white is pretty obvious when you think about it. They don't want to reveal the colors yet. They're building suspense, controlling the narrative, making sure that when they do unveil the full color palette, it's on their terms with maximum impact. I'm genuinely surprised we haven't seen any leaks from employees who must be walking past these vehicles every day. You know there are people snapping photos on their phones, sharing glimpses with friends and family. But somehow, either through impressive operational security or just good fortune, those images haven't made their way onto the internet yet. When it comes to predicting what colors we might see, I'm placing my bets on Rivian Blue being in the mix. It's become something of a signature color for the brand, appearing prominently in their marketing materials and becoming instantly recognizable to anyone who follows electric vehicles. Looking at one of those black and white images, it appears to show what's likely a white R2, which would make sense as white is almost always a launch color for any vehicle. But the real question is whether Rivian is going to come out swinging with something bold and unexpected. Could we see a canyon yellow or a borealis purple right out of the gate? Something that makes a statement and gets people talking? Or will they play it safer initially, sticking with more traditional colors like red, white, blue, various shades of gray, maybe a forest green, or a classic silver? Time will tell, but the anticipation around something as simple as color choices speaks to how much enthusiasm there is for this vehicle. Alongside the social media posts, Rivian reached out to select media contacts and influencers with more information about these MVBs. The distribution was interesting. Some people received the information while others, presumably equally qualified and interested, didn't. It created a bit of a scramble in the Rivian community as people tried to piece together all the details from various sources. The information that went out painted an impressive picture of how quickly Rivian has moved on this project. Just a year ago, the R2 expansion area in Normal was nothing more than a concrete slab foundation. Raw potential, but nothing tangible. Now, 12 months later, they're building validation vehicles. That's an incredibly compressed timeline for automotive manufacturing, and it speaks to both the urgency Rivian feels around getting the R2 to market and the capability of their team to execute under pressure. But Rivian isn't content to just build these vehicles and keep them locked away in testing facilities. They're planning something special for at least one of these MVBs. This particular validation build is embarking on a road trip along the iconic Route 66, America's Mother Road. That legendary highway that stretches from Chicago to Los Angeles, passing through the heart of America and countless communities along the way. The symbolism here is rich. Route 66 represents American automotive culture, freedom, adventure, the open road. It's the perfect backdrop for introducing the R2 to the country, for showing that this isn't just another electric vehicle, but something that embodies the spirit of exploration and adventure that has always been at the core of American car culture. The R2 will be stopping at legendary sites along Route 66, and Rivian is documenting the entire journey on their social media channels, particularly Instagram. For those following along, it's worth noting that Normal, Illinois, where these MVBs are being built, is actually located along Route 66. So this road trip likely starts right there at the factory, with the vehicle rolling off the assembly line and immediately embarking on its cross-country journey. The destination is almost certainly Irvine, California, where Rivian maintains significant office space and where many of their software, design, and engineering teams are based. This isn't just a publicity stunt, though it certainly serves that purpose well. It's also a practical way to get these MVBs into the hands of various teams who need them. The software engineers in Irvine will get seat time with production-intent hardware. The service teams can start developing their training programs. The marketing team can create content. Everyone benefits from having these vehicles distributed across Rivian's operational footprint. Now, it's important to understand that these first MVBs don't represent the absolute final form of the R2. There's going to be another generation of the vehicle coming toward the end of 2026 that will include some significant upgrades, most notably the addition of LiDAR hardware. For those unfamiliar, LiDAR stands for Light Detection and Ranging, and it's a sensor technology that uses laser pulses to create detailed three-dimensional maps of the environment around a vehicle. Many companies working on autonomous driving systems rely heavily on LiDAR because of its precision and reliability in various conditions. Rivian is developing what appears to be a vision-based autonomy system, relying primarily on cameras to perceive and understand the road environment, much like Tesla's approach. But they're adding LiDAR as an additional layer of perception, another data source that can validate what the cameras are seeing and provide redundancy in challenging conditions. The LiDAR-equipped R2s arriving in late 2026 will represent Rivian's newer autonomy platform, giving the vehicle enhanced capability to understand its surroundings with greater precision. This is all part of Rivian's long-term vision for advanced driver assistance systems and eventually more autonomous capabilities. I'll be honest, I'm not the self-driving expert, and the nuances of sensor fusion and perception algorithms aren't my area of expertise. But what I do know is that Rivian is taking a thoughtful, layered approach to autonomy, combining multiple sensing modalities rather than betting everything on a single technology. That seems like a smart strategy, particularly as the technology continues to evolve, and as we learn more about the real-world challenges of autonomous driving. Regardless of the technical details around future autonomy features, the bottom line is simple. It's been a long time coming, and I'm incredibly eager to get my hands on an R2. I'm not alone in that sentiment. Doug DeMuro, one of the most influential automotive YouTubers in the world, mentioned in his recent video about the vehicles he's most excited for in 2026 that the Rivian R2 is high on his list. He indicated that in the coming weeks or months, he'd be getting access to an R2 for a full review. When Doug DeMuro reviews a vehicle, millions of people watch. His perspective carries weight because he's thorough, he's fair, and he has an incredible ability to highlight both the strengths and weaknesses of any car he evaluates. Having him cover the R2 will introduce the vehicle to an enormous audience, many of whom might not be deeply familiar with Rivian as a brand. On top of that media exposure, Rivian CEO R.J. Scaringe has previously indicated that the company will be hosting another R2 event before deliveries begin. This event will dive deep into all the available configurations and options, breaking down the pricing structure, explaining the various trim levels, detailing what features come standard versus what's optional. This kind of transparency and information sharing is crucial for potential buyers who are trying to make informed decisions about their purchases. We should expect this event to happen sometime in the coming months, probably coordinated with the launch of the online configurator that will allow reservation holders to actually spec out their vehicles and lock in their orders. The configurator launch is one of those milestone moments that transforms the R2 from an abstract concept into a concrete, personalized product. Instead of just knowing you want an R2, you'll be able to decide exactly which R2 you want, what color, what interior, What battery size? What wheel design? All-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive? Every choice brings you closer to the reality of actually taking delivery. I'm expecting the configurator to go live around the same time as that detailed R2 event, creating a comprehensive information dump and ordering opportunity all at once. These are the kinds of activities that build momentum, that transform general interest into genuine hype, that move people from casually considering an electric vehicle to actively planning their purchase. We're now at a stage where Rivian is building validation vehicles, where production is ramping up, where the vehicle is transitioning from development to reality. At this point, the remaining work is largely about marketing and building anticipation, making sure that when the R2 does launch, there's a groundswell of awareness and excitement that translates into sales. Rivian clearly understands this, which is why they recently brought on Greg Rawl as their Chief Customer Officer. His role is specifically focused on enhancing the customer experience, on making sure that every interaction someone has with Rivian, whether it's through marketing materials, the purchasing process, or ongoing ownership and service, reflects the quality and innovation of the products themselves. This appointment signals that Rivian recognizes the R2 is a different kind of challenge than the R1 was. The R1T and R1S were aimed at early adopters, people who were willing to take a chance on a new brand, who valued innovation and capability over established reputation. Those customers were relatively easy to reach through automotive enthusiast channels and word of mouth. The R2, though, that's a different story. It's positioned as a more mainstream vehicle, priced to compete with a much broader segment of the electric vehicle market. It's going up against offerings from established automakers who have extensive dealer networks, robust service infrastructure, massive marketing budgets, and decades of brand recognition. If you're Rivian, you can't just assume people will discover the R2 on their own. You have to actively market it. You have to build awareness. You have to convince people that this new brand, this company that many Americans still haven't heard of, is worth their consideration and their money. The foundation of that marketing effort has to be customer satisfaction among existing owners. Happy R1T and R1S owners are Rivian's best advertisement. They're the ones who will recommend the brand to friends and family, who will post photos on social media, who will speak enthusiastically about their experiences. Rivian knows this, which is why investing in customer experience isn't just about making current owners happy. It's about turning those owners into advocates who will organically spread the word about the R2. I'm expecting to see a significant ramp up in R2 marketing and advertising as we get closer to deliveries. More social media content, more events, more press coverage, more opportunities for people to see and interact with the vehicle. One thing I'm particularly hoping for is that Rivian will place some of these manufacturing validation builds in Rivian spaces, their retail locations scattered across the country. These MVBs are much more refined than the R2s that were part of the initial tour after the unveiling. They represent the actual production vehicle much more accurately. There have been changes, refinements, improvements since those early prototypes. The charge port placement has been adjusted. The overall width of the vehicle has been modified. There are numerous small details that have evolved through the development process. Having these updated MVBs in showrooms would give potential customers the chance to see the real thing, to get up close with the production intent vehicle, to understand its size and proportions and presence in a way that photos and videos can never quite capture. People wouldn't even need to sit in them or drive them at this stage. Just having them physically present, allowing people to walk around them, to peer through the windows, to get a sense of what they'd actually be buying, that would be incredibly valuable for building excitement and confidence. Especially in Rivian spaces, where the environment is already designed to showcase the brand and educate potential customers, having an R2 on display would be a natural fit. The timing would be perfect too. Over the past week or so, there's been a noticeable uptick in R2 sightings around the country. A couple of months ago, Rivian mentioned that hundreds of R2s would be out on roads for testing, and we're now seeing the evidence of that statement. People are spotting these vehicles everywhere, sharing photos and videos online, speculating about what they're testing and where they're going. As more MVBs are produced and distributed to various teams and locations, these sightings are only going to increase. Every sighting generates conversation, creates buzz, keeps the R2 top of mind for people following the electric vehicle space. Looking at what we know about the R2's rollout timeline, there are several key phases to track. The first phase, which we're in right now, involves these initial MVBs and the ramp up to production. Deliveries are expected to begin in the coming months, probably starting with launch edition vehicles that will feature premium configurations and pricing. History suggests that Rivian will prioritize all-wheel drive variants first, as those tend to be more popular and carry higher margins. The rear-wheel drive option, which will be the most affordable entry point into R2 ownership, will likely come later, possibly extending into 2027 as production volumes increase, and Rivian works through the backlog of early reservations. Then, toward the end of 2026, we'll see that second phase I mentioned earlier, the introduction of R2s with the newer autonomy platform, including LiDAR hardware. After that, the timeline extends to Georgia, where Rivian is still planning to build a massive manufacturing facility that will eventually produce both R2s and the highly anticipated R3. That Georgia production is probably still a few years out, likely late 2027 or into 2028, depending on how construction and equipment installation progresses. In the Normal, Illinois factory, Rivian has been sharing some interesting production statistics. There's a giant poster on display indicating that an R2 will be produced, on average, every 2 minutes once they're at full production speed. That's an impressive cadence, and it represents a significant improvement in manufacturing efficiency compared to the R1 vehicles. Speaking of which, it takes approximately 15 hours to build an R2 from start to finish, compared to about 18 hours for an R1. That 3-hour reduction might not sound like much, but across thousands of vehicles, it adds up to substantial cost savings and increased capacity. The target production capacity for R2 out of the Normal facility is somewhere in the range of 150,000 to 175,000 units annually. There's been some conflicting information on the exact number. A relatively recent poster at the factory indicated 150,000, while R.J. Scaringe had previously mentioned figures closer to 175,000. The truth is probably somewhere in that range, and the actual achievable capacity will depend on numerous factors including supply chain stability, labor availability, quality control standards, and demand patterns. Regardless of whether it's 150,000 or 175,000, producing that many vehicles out of the Normal facility is absolutely critical for Rivian's financial health. The economics of automotive manufacturing are brutally simple in some ways and incredibly complex in others. There are fixed costs that don't change regardless of production volume. The factory lights need to stay on whether you're building 1 vehicle a day or 100 vehicles an hour. Insurance premiums, property taxes, base-level staffing, facility maintenance. These are expenses that Rivian has to absorb no matter what. When production volumes are low, those fixed costs get distributed across a smaller number of vehicles, meaning each vehicle carries a heavier burden of overhead expense. As production volumes increase, those same fixed costs get spread across more units, reducing the per-vehicle overhead and improving margins. Rivian has been producing around 2,000 vehicles annually at their current run rate. That's respectable for a relatively new automaker, but it's nowhere near what the Normal facility is capable of handling. The facility has a maximum theoretical capacity of around 215,000 vehicles per year across all product lines. With R1 production running at current levels and R2 production ramping up to potentially 150,000 or more annually, Rivian would be utilizing their existing facility much more efficiently. That improved utilization translates directly to better unit economics, getting them closer to profitability, not just on a gross margin basis for a quarter or two, but sustainably across the entire business. This is why the R2 is so important to Rivian's future. It's not just about adding another product to their lineup. It's about achieving the production volumes necessary to make their business model work, to reach sustainable profitability, to generate the cash flow needed for future investments in new products and technologies. The R1 vehicles established Rivian as a legitimate automaker capable of building world-class electric adventure vehicles. The R2 is what will determine whether Rivian can become a financially viable, enduring company in the brutally competitive automotive industry. As we watch these manufacturing validation builds roll off the line, as we track that Route 66 journey, as we wait for configurators and delivery dates and all the other milestones still to come, it's worth taking a moment to appreciate how far Rivian has come and how much is riding on getting the R2 launch right. This isn't just another product launch. It's a make-or-break moment for a company that has captured the imagination of electric vehicle enthusiasts worldwide, but now needs to prove it can compete in the mainstream market. The excitement is real, the anticipation is building, and if everything goes according to plan, the coming months are going to be transformative for Rivian. I've got a ton of content in the works, videos I've filmed, topics I'm researching, stories I want to tell as this R2 journey unfolds. Those will be coming out as we move through this pivotal period. For now, though, the main message is simple. The Rivian R2 is real. It's being built. And it's almost here. After years of waiting, speculation, and anticipation, we're finally approaching the moment when people will actually be driving these vehicles on real roads, living with them daily, experiencing everything Rivian has promised. That's incredibly exciting, and I can't wait to see how it all unfolds.